Hey, what's up YouTube? Gavin here, back with another video. Today I'm going to show you how to bounce the 4 tracks on the OP-1 into a single track. And actually I'm going to show you 3 different ways to do it and talk about some of the limitations and gotchas of each of them. I went ahead and made a drum loop ahead of time. Let's just give it a listen. So you can see these are all on their own separate tracks. So let's assume we've done a little bit of like, EQing and volume balancing and whatnot to get the mix just perfect. And now we want to bounce that down to a single track so that we can use the other 3 tracks to do, our melody or other melodic elements, bass line, that sort of stuff. So what we're going to do is first lift all the tracks that we have here. So while you're in loop mode, if you hold shift and lift, it's going to lift everything, all 4 tracks. Just make sure you drop them back down, otherwise you're going to lose them. And then I'll jump over to the next bar and drop it. And you can see now we have that there. Same thing. So the trick here is to choose a track. I like track 4. It's my bass line. I just think 4 is the bottom. I just use it for whatever reason. Now what we're going to do is mute it, so only the other elements play back. And the reason we're going to do that is we're going to resample the audio from the OP-1 itself. And we don't want the drum track playing back because that's the thing we're recording to. And if it's playing back, you're going to get like double the volume from that track. So let's hop over to the record button here, hit that. Let me just show you. So you want to make sure you're on the ear icon, which means we're recording what the OP-1 is playing. So just boom, head back over there. We'll go back to our tape track. And then if you hit this record button or sample button, you just want to make sure that it's not the purple X. You want the ear to ensure that it's going to record whatever the OP-1 is playing. So now it's just as simple as hitting record and play. Perfect. We'll just trim that end there. And if I lift this, just drop it back down. So I have a copy of it, drop it here. Now we only have the single track on 4. Let me just unmute it. Oops. We'll jump to it here. Boom. There we have a perfect copy of our 4 tracks. So that's the first way to do it, and probably the most common way. That's the way I use the most, but it doesn't provide any backup of your tracks or easier ways to sort of move them around. You always got to go back and lift it or remember where that track is. So one of my other favorite ways to do this is to sample it or lift and then sample it down to a drum track. So that's the second way. Let me show you how I do that. So if I go back to our original here, we got that playing. Let's just make sure that our ear is off so we're not accidentally recording the OP-1 when we don't mean to. And then again, if I shift lift, just drop it back down so I have a copy of it. Now if I head over to a drum track here, I can drop it down. Boom. So you'll see there, now it shows up, but it's also mixed in with all the other drums, the other sample. Kind of hectic. So what I like to do to get around this so it's a nice clean break is to go back to the tape and then extend my loop just into an empty bar. So if I set the out point there, you can see I have all my track information and an empty bar. So now if I shift lift that, let's just drop it again so I have the copy of it. Now let's head over to the drum track. Just make sure you're on the first, oops, sorry, that was loud. Just make sure you're on the first key here and then we can drop down. Oops, why didn't that work? It might be because I already have the sample in here. I've had this before. Let me just go ahead and quickly reset it to, I don't know, whatever, acetate. Okay, we'll go back here, relift, we'll drop it. Now we'll go back to the drum track. Now let's drop it. Yeah, that's what it was. So if I zoom out of here, you can see that I have this, this blank tail here, and that's that empty bar that I left. Because like I said, when you drop it, it also, if it's not the full length of the sample, it'll include all the old sample data as well. So having that blank bar just makes it really easy to find where it ends. And I usually leave, just a little gap, and it'll make it easier for me to find my loop point. So there we go. You set it onto one-shot mode and play it back. except that sounds totally wrong for some reason. Oh, it's because I'm in, wow, I'm in the pattern mode. Sorry about that. Let's, should I redo that part? Not screw it, we're just gonna keep going. There we go. Now it sounds as the way you'd expect. A lot of little quirks with the OP-1, so that's actually something that catches me all the time, so it's probably good that you saw it. If your drums are doing something you're not expecting, you probably have like an effect on, like the filter or something. Actually, I may have had that filter on when I dropped that. I don't think it matters. I should probably turn off the LFO. But another classic mistake is to leave the pattern mode on. So if I go back over here, listen to that, sounds good. Now I can go over to our track here and play it back just as normal. And because it starts exactly when I press the button and I have that empty part of the loop point, I can just wait till it gets to the end of the 2 bars and trim it. So let's give it a go. There, and then jump back, just trim that and lift it. So one thing that you might notice, let's listen to the first method where we trimmed down from the other 4 tracks to this track. If I play it back, you'll notice that this one is noticeably quieter. Now, I'm actually not sure why that happens, but I noticed that if I bump my sample volume +8, it matches pretty closely to what it was. So if I go back to those drums, you hold down Shift so that the orange button now turns to volume control, and I increase that to +8. Go back here, let's just lift this one out, and I'm gonna re-record it. There we go. Now, if we listen to this one and the second one, they should be pretty close, if not identical. Actually, that's got a little more punch. But anyway, you get the idea. You adjust the volume until you get it essentially to where you want it to be. So that was the second method. The nice thing about this method is not only do you now have it in your drums and you can, essentially jump around the tape and drop it wherever you want, you can also make a backup of it just by holding down that sample. And you'll see it saying saving, which is awesome. Now it's like, even if I accidentally overwrite this sample, or I'm like using all 8 samples and I need to get back to some of the other ones, I can always get back to my original sampled information there. So really helpful. The only real limitation there is obviously the sample length. The sample length on the OP-1, I believe, is 16 seconds or 14 seconds. I think it's 16. So there's obviously a limitation there, but still a lot of room to be creative with. So that was number 2. The last one is not, I'll mention it just because you can do really long ways of bouncing down tracks, but it's not my favorite just because it's a little quirky. Let me quickly get rid of these just so they're out of my way. Lift that, go back to our regular out point here. Okay, so we've got our drum track. The last way is to simply just use the album or record. And then you just do that by hitting this COM button over here to get to there. And then you can record what the OP-1's playing back. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm only gonna do 1 bar, so I'll jump back here, turn off loop mode, and then jump back to record here. And, oh, actually one thing before I forget is, because we're gonna record and then put that back on our track, what we want to do is actually turn down our overdrive. And I may have forgot to mention to do this on when you're resampling from the previous method, because it's basically going to stack the overdrive. You're like recording a compressed waveform and then resampling to it, so it'll make it even louder. So just make sure that that's turned down when you resample this way. So if we jump back, go to the album, hit record. I usually just give myself like a 1 second count in and then hit play. So go 1 and then hit record. You'll notice it's much quieter than it was before. Oops. I think that might have been a different thing. Let's stop. That's all we needed for the recording. You'll notice it was much quieter than before, and that's because we don't have the compressor on. But either way, now that when we jump back here, we have our original there. What we can do is, again, turn on the OP-1 to record itself and start recording and then play back the album that we were just on. So the problem here, which is probably obvious at this point, is getting the timing right is well, impossible. So you have to find the trim point of where your loop started. So let me show you what I mean. Because I have to hit play here, but I also need to record on the OP-1, I gotta go to record, start, go over here, now hit play. There. So if I jump back to my tape, it's still recording. So now I have to go in and find where that was. And the easiest way to do that, I find, is to just scrub through until I get a sound wave. Oh, there we go. And then I try to just watch the time signature there. Seems like it's almost bang on 16 seconds, maybe just under 20, 24. Let's try 23. So if we cut here and try that, that sounds about right. Let's just go with it. So I'm gonna lift this one out of my way. This is just blank. I'm gonna lift this track. Now because I have it cut right to the start of the bar, I can drop it on a bar, and then I know it's 2 bars long, so I can go 1, 2, and then cut here, lift the tail, and now this should be my bar. Yeah, it sounds pretty close actually. Let's just try it as a loop. We could go ahead and turn the compressor back on. Cool. So there you go. That's how you do it, guys. So you got the first method, which is essentially just to like lift everything and resample down to 1 track. That's probably my favorite and honestly the easiest. My second favorite is to use the drum method. Sampling down to those, obviously a limitation of 6, but also gives you the freedom to drop that wherever you want, and also, you know, kind of a pseudo backup, which is really handy. And then lastly, the album method, which can be good, especially if you're doing like really long samples. You know, you have like a minute or something of a chord progression, or you're making ambient. That can be a really great way to stack stuff. Not great for the drums because, as you can see, it's really hard to get the timing right. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more of them, just let me know, you know, what kind of stuff you guys are into. I'm hoping to do a couple more on the OP-1. I also have a Digitact, which I'm going to be doing some reviews and jams on soon. But yeah, if you like this content, please subscribe, give me the thumbs up, and we'll see you next time. Take care.